all for your practice. So tonight I want to talk about what could possibly be one of the most cliche topics in Buddhism, letting go. Right? In the Buddha's teachings, the practice of letting go plays a crucial role in our journey towards freedom and awakening and liberation from suffering. The more we cling, the more we suffer. It's a pretty simple equation. Clinging equals suffering. It's not like Terrence Howard math or anything. I don't know about you, but if you're anything like me, when we hold on to views about the way that things should be or cling to any kind of desired outcome, that kind of sets us up for failure, right? I know it does for me. But by releasing attachments and expectations and fixed views, we can ultimately cultivate a profound sense of peace and contentment. Ajahn Chah, who is a pretty famous Thai forest monk, said that if you let go a little, you get a little bit of freedom. If you let go a lot, you get a lot of freedom. If you let go completely, you're completely free. So I still have what I would describe as an unskillful habit. I try to plan things, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a lot of times in this practice you'll hear that. So like if you were to Google the Four Noble Truths, you would see like life is like the first noble truth would be life is suffering, which I don't think is really accurate. I think life contains suffering, but it's not all suffering. In fact, the Chinese Buddhists say that life is both 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows. And I'm more inclined to believe that. The second noble truth would be that desire is the cause of suffering. And again, I don't necessarily believe that either. It's okay to desire things as long as they're healthy things. There's actually a word for that in Pali, which is the language of the Buddha. It's called chanda. Chanda is a healthy desire, whereas tana is craving. So it's okay to have desires as long as they're healthy ones, I think. But when we get attached to specific outcomes, we kind of open the door for suffering to come in. So for instance, I was in a multi-year training in order to be able to facilitate groups like this, lead meditations, give Dharma talks, things of that nature. And I am authorized to do this through the lineage that I have trained through. My hope is to one day be fully empowered to teach residential retreats, but the program that I was looking at that would be the path for me to be able to do that stopped last year. They're no longer offering that, so now I'm kind of left with no real path to full empowerment and ordination, whatever that looks like for me. So I have no idea how that's going to happen or if it's going to happen. I hope it does, but it may not. And there's times that I get so wrapped up in that I cause myself a metric shit ton of suffering. In reality, it just doesn't matter though. I love doing what I'm doing already, but it is the human tendency, and it is certainly mine, to get obsessed with getting to the next thing, right? We get the thing, and the thing doesn't satisfy us for very long. We're on to the next thing. We want the next thing. So I have what would be called this craving for becoming. It's this becoming something that I'm currently not. And this is a particular kind of tana. It's called bhava tana. They said it's the craving for becoming. And when I let that in, guess what? I suffer. Suffering's kind of like a vampire, right? Like you have to let it in. We have to invite it in for it to affect us. But once we invite it in, it will more than likely drain the life right out of you. And I know it does for me. So the Buddha taught that to relinquish he taught us to relinquish various aspects of our experience in order to free ourselves from suffering. And he emphasized the importance of letting go. So one of the things that we could probably let go of is sensory desire. Like how often does not having the thing you want cause you to stress out? Anybody? Me? Okay. I was kind of sure I wasn't alone in that. I just wanted to make sure. It's like the if-onlys, right? So if only I had this, then I'd be happy. If only I could get this thing or this degree or this job, hang out with this group of people. If only I had that, then I would be happy. It's like we want the new car and we want the perfect partner or whatever the thing is, right? But that, like as I said earlier, that happiness is always very short-lived. We want the thing, and that might make us happy for a moment, but then we're on to the next thing really quickly. And that's not our fault. It's a process of our evolution. When we were still hunter-gatherers, we needed that. We needed to be, because when we would find food and be satiated, that would enable our survival. But then we had to find more food, so the happiness of attaining the sweet food or whatever it was didn't last very long, because in order to survive, we had to keep searching. We don't have to do that now, but we still have pretty old programming, so we continue to do the same things. So in reality, it's not even the thing that we crave. As I said, the happiness is short-lived. It's craving itself that we crave. It's the act of the hunt. It's the action that we put into trying to attain the thing that we actually crave. And craving always leads to suffering. We try to control things. That's another thing we could probably let go of, control. I think we all try to control aspects of our experience. And if we can let go of anything, I think it's trying to control our experience, because in reality, we have very little control over most things in our lives. We want things to be a certain way. We want some sort of consistency. So we try to arrange things in such a way that will give us this consistency and some level of control. But as I said, in reality, we have very little actual control. Again, Ajahn Chah encourages to relinquish the need to control, to cease striving and instead rest in the present moment, trusting in the natural unfolding of life. So I do construction by trade. I'm a carpenter, and I had this job that I was bidding on, and I was approved to do the job, and I was actually supposed to meet with the woman today and give her the contract and take the deposit. And then she, out of the blue, messages me on Friday and said that she has to have this fence done immediately. She needs somebody that will start tomorrow. And this is like 5 o'clock on a Friday. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not going to be me. So I lost this job. Let that go too, right? Let it go. Ajahn Chah said, let go of what is past. Let go of what may come. Let go of what is happening now. Don't try to figure anything out. Don't try to make anything happen. Relax right now and rest. So back to my story about wanting to become a fully empowered teacher, right? Again, that's becoming something that I'm currently not. And that's my mind going into what I like to call selfing, right? We have this very fixated view of some sort of static, stable self. We get caught up in the I and the me and the mine. But the idea that I can be anything is kind of insane, because there is no fixed self. We're constantly changing. We're constantly evolving. Our cells are constantly dying and regenerating. Our minds are constantly changing. Our thoughts are constantly changing. Our emotions are constantly changing. Everything is constantly changing. There is no permanence in anything in this world. So to try to establish some sort of identity around being a Buddhist teacher or even a Buddhist or anything like that at all is only going to lead to more suffering on my end. So lately, I am trying to let go of that identification. I'm trying to let go of the idea of being a teacher or a meditation instructor. I'm trying to let go of the concept of even being a Buddhist or a Dharma practitioner. I'm trying to let go of the idea of being a construction worker. I'm trying to let go of anything that would serve to define me as something other than just my true self. Because I am nothing. I'm not anything other than a human being. and we get wrapped up in the doing, and we label ourselves with things like our jobs. It's like the first question somebody asks you, like, hey, what do you do? Like that defines you somehow. They might as well ask you what your favorite sports team is, which people also use to define themselves. But none of that shit defines who you are. Like, you are just you. In the Anatalakana Sutta, it says, you will experience liberation when you let go of the mistaken notion of a permanent, separate self. Free yourself from attachment to ego and discover the boundless nature of existence. So let go. Let go of the idea of that you are anything other than you. Let go of anything that you try to use to define you other than just your true self. So why should we let go? Liberation from suffering would be a pretty good start, right? Letting go gives us freedom when we're no longer held captive by our views of the way things should or shouldn't be. We're not bound by our cravings. So letting go is instrumental in this path to liberation and awakening. In the Dhammapada, verse 363, it says, attachment is the root of suffering. By letting go, we release ourselves from the chains that bind us to discontentment and find lasting peace. So when we let go, we open ourselves up to the path of true happiness, the happiness that is free from conditions. And all things in the exterior world are conditioned, and all conditioned things are impermanent. Things are always changing. When we hold on to things as though they have some permanence, we're bound to suffer. And that doesn't just go for ourselves, it goes for anything out here too. Anybody ever heard of entropy? Like, everything is falling apart all the time. Like, there is nothing static in this world. The impermanent nature of things is ultimately unsatisfactory, or dukkha, right? That's where we get this word dukkha, this unsatisfactory nature to existence itself, because there is no permanence in it. We want things to be a certain way, we want things to last forever, but nothing lasts forever. Everything arises only to pass away. We're all subject to what are referred to as the worldly winds. There's 8 of these. These are joy and pain, loss and gain, praise and blame, fame and shame, right? So it's like sometimes we're on top of the world, and then sometimes we've got the weight of the world on our shoulders. And that's just the nature of things. There's nothing wrong with us. In Western culture, everything has a diagnosis, and there's this idea that if you're not happy all the time, that there's something wrong with you. There's not anything wrong with any of you. We're all just human beings that experience a broad range of emotions. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, it says, whatever is subject to origination is all subject to cessation. And so the Buddha reminds us that all conditioned phenomena arise and cease. By recognizing this impermanence and letting go of our attachment to these transient formations, so to speak, we can liberate ourselves from suffering. So when we stop clinging to the good times, we don't suffer, because the good times are going to pass. We don't get overwhelmed when they stop. When we stop being obsessed over the bad times and really wallowing in it, we stop suffering. Because the good times, they're going to pass. The bad times, they're also going to pass. Even though it may not seem like it in that moment, they do, eventually. When we go through difficult times, we know through our own direct experience that they will end. Who here had a bad day in the past month, right? Did it stop? Yeah, probably. So there's a story I'd actually like to tell about this. There's a very rich man, and he died, and as is custom in their country, his 2 sons started living in a conjoined family. This is in India at one Things went well for a while, but as things do, they tend to fall apart over time. And so since these two brothers were no longer getting along quite so well, they started becoming at odds. So they decided to separate the family, and in doing so, they had to split everything evenly. When everything was divided, they kind of came across like a small package, and they had no idea what was in it. They're like, what is this, right? So they opened it up, and it contained 2 rings. And one of these rings was just an ordinary silver ring, and the other ring was a ring that was made of gold and encrusted with diamonds. And the older brother, he kind of started to develop some greediness around this, and so he started trying to explain to his younger brother that it most likely was an heirloom of some sort, and that he should be the one to hold on to it rather than his younger brother, because he was afraid his younger brother would sell it and take the money. And if it was sold, it would be lost, and it was their father's, so he didn't want it to be lost. This is the story he told him anyway. The younger brother just basically smiled and was like, all right, yeah, be happy. You keep the diamond ring, I'll keep the silver ring, no big deal, whatever. And so they began living their separate lives in separate families, and as there always are, there are ups and there are downs. But when spring comes, the older brother, he's ecstatic. It's spring, it's time to plant. Everything is amazing. And when fall and winter arrive, he sinks into this really terrible depression. He gets extremely depressed. This goes on and on and on. And he's always having these high highs and these low lows. He's always losing the balance of the mind. With everything that arises, he's always fluctuating to high highs. With every bad thing that happens, he's always going to these super depressed low lows. And so he begins taking medication to try to help with that. He takes tranquilizers and sleeping pills and super sleeping pills and ultra super sleeping pills, and looking for some sort of peace of mind, but it just doesn't come. And it eventually gets to the point where he has a nervous breakdown and he's hospitalized in basically a mental ward. And the younger brother, he begins thinking, he's like, my father kept this diamond ring for obvious reasons. It's a gold ring with diamonds in it. He obviously kept that for a reason, but why would he keep the silver ring in the same package? Why would those be together? And so he gets the silver ring out and he starts inspecting it. And he noticed that there's an inscription on the ring, and it says, this will also change. Okay? He said, this is the teaching of my father, that this will also change. So he puts the ring on his little finger, and he goes about his life. So spring comes, and he enjoys it, and he looks at the ring, this will also change. And when spring passes, he's like, of course, nothing is eternal. Spring can't last forever. This will also change. And winter comes, and guess what? He looks at the ring, this will also change. No depression, no sadness. This will also change. Ups and downs are going to happen in life. The worldly winds are bound to happen. We'll have good times, we'll have bad times. And he starts remembering, if he can remember this, that this will also change, we can kind of get him in front of that kind of suffering, right? When we know that the good times are going to end, we don't cling to them. When we know that the bad times are going to end, we don't suffer over them. So this suffering over change is what is referred to as vipira nama dukkha, right? It's this type of suffering that is only related to resistance to change. So everything arises, everything passes away. Good times, bad times, all of it. Bhikkhu Bodhi said, when we let go, we develop equanimity, the ability to remain balanced and at ease amidst life's ups and downs. Another thing that we could probably stand to let go of are expectations. This past Saturday, I put together this relational mindfulness workshop that I had put a lot of effort into. I've been planning it and advertising it for months, probably about 3 or 4 months. I started planning this and advertising it. And I put a lot of effort into it because I wanted to provide this experience for people to undertake this practice of relational mindfulness, and because it's a beautiful practice. It's really just learning to communicate with other people better. It's learning active listening. It's, there's a lot that went into it. I put a lot of time into it. I try to put a lot of time in everything I do. I'm very passionate about what I do. And I know people have stuff going on, right? And, it's summertime, people have their own lives. There's, a million things to do. But nobody showed up. Like 0 people signed up. Like I had nobody show up. And as ridiculous as it sounds, it still felt like, and I know it's ridiculous because people have busy lives, but as ridiculous as this sounds, like it still felt kind of like a personal insult to me, like, oh, it's terrible. And that's because of the expectations that I had, right? I felt a little slighted. Like my emotions are always just trying to hijack my own sense of happiness, I still have trouble surrendering to the outcome of things, especially things that I put a lot of hard work into. We can do things to the best of our ability and put in all the effort, but at the end of the day, there's no guarantee on how things are going to turn out, right? And that sucks. It would be nice if there was some guarantees in this life, especially when we put in hard work, but there's just not. Another thing that we struggle with is maintaining our sense of equanimity when these things happen. How can we maintain a positive mental state when we're being crushed under the weight of uncertainty and disappointment? How do we let go of the fear of even trying to do anything when we know that there's the potential for failure? Because there's a lot of fear and that just surrounds that. Like, why even try if we could fail? Anytime we try to do something that's outside of our comfort zone, there's fear involved because of that aspect of uncertainty. I'm not sure if it'll work out or not. That's another thing that I do a podcast, and for a long time I was like really obsessed over the numbers. Like, why are people listening to my podcast? It's like, why? Because nobody knows who the fuck you are, man. You're not famous. Like. If you're famous, you're pretty much guaranteed listeners, but I'm not. But I get a decent amount of numbers. But there was a lot of fear going into that. Like, I just had no idea how it would turn out.
I looked into the stats recently, and if you get more than 105 listeners on your new episode in a 7-day period, you're already in the 25th percentile, upper percentile.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many that just go into the ether with nothing. Right. If you get 30 listeners in a 7-day period on a new episode, you're already in the 50th upper percentile.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's
you're
good.
Doing all right.
Yeah. No, I'm doing fine, but I've let go of that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've let go of it. I don't give a shit, honestly. Like, I put it out because it's fun to do, and I want it to be a resource for people. More than anything, like I said, I used to obsess over it pretty hard, as you know, because we've talked about this.
Yeah.
But again, I let that go. Because there's this deep acceptance that has to be kind of come to, is that like most of the shit that we do, no matter how much work we put into it, no matter how passionate we are about it, is likely to fail. Like, that's just the nature of things. Like, most of the things we do are going to fail, unfortunately. So deep acceptance and a lot of letting go. Ajahn Brahm said, let go of your expectations of how life should unfold. Embrace the reality of what is and find peace in accepting things as they are. So another thing that we can probably stand to let go of are fixed views. Because there is what is, this baseline reality, which absolutely none of us know what it is. 0% of people know what reality actually is, because we're always viewing it through the lens of our own perception. That's kind of weird, right? Like, what is reality? Well, nobody knows. This alone, I think, can cause a lot of turmoil, because we get when we're always viewing it through our own reality, it can put us at odds with other people. Like, no, things are this way. Like, well, no, I think things are this way. So when we hold on to these fixed views about the way things should be, the way things are, the way things shouldn't be, again, we're setting ourselves up for a pretty healthy amount of suffering. It really just hinders our growth, But letting go of them opens us up to new possibilities. Ajahn Sumedho said, to let go of fixed views is to open the door to wisdom. Embrace a flexible mind, willing to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so that's what I try to do. Just remain curious, right? Like, let go of fixed views. Let go of knowing the answer all the time. Oh, I know the answer. I don't know shit. That's the only thing I know is I don't know anything, right? Except like some weird poly terms that nobody understands. I do those. I've mentioned this word dukkha a few times, and there's three different types of dukkha that we can experience. There's dukkha, which is like the hard tax of life, like basically life itself. Birth is dukkha, sickness, aging, death, not getting what we want, getting things we don't want, losing people that are close to us. All of these are what are referred to as dukkha. I've also talked about viparinama dukkha, which is the suffering that we experience when we're resistant to change. Then there's what is called sankhara dukkha. And this is, sankhara is a word that means something like habit patterns or mental formations. So this is the suffering that the mind creates, right? This is when we get lost in the shoulds and shouldn'ts, like the way things should be, the way things shouldn't be. In the Buddha's teaching, the concept of sankhara dukkha refers to the inherent unsatisfactoriness of conditioned existence. And that sounds pretty heavy, because it is. Sankhara refers to the conditioned formations, habits, and mental constructs that arise and pass away. So this practice of letting go directly addresses this form of dukkha and offers a path to liberation. Letting go of the way things should or shouldn't be. When we have a fixed view of the way things should or shouldn't be, we set ourselves up for a lot of suffering. In order to do that, in order to let go, we have to just let things be as they are. We have to just let what is be, not try to change it. You have to surrender to the flow of life, basically. There's this Ajahn Sumedho quote and it's kind of long, but bear with me, and I really like this a lot. It said, the practice of letting go is very effective for minds obsessed by compulsive thinking. You simplify your meditation practice down to just 2 words, letting go. Rather than try to develop this practice and then develop that, and achieve this and go into that, and understand this, and read the suttas, and study the Abhidharma, and then learn Pali and Sanskrit, then the Majjhima Nikaya and the Prajnaparamita, get ordinations in Theravada, Mahayana, Vajrayana, write books and become a world-renowned authority on Buddhism. Instead of becoming the world's expert on Buddhism and being invited to great international Buddhist conferences, just let go, let go, let go. He says, I did nothing but this for about 2 years. Every time I tried to understand or figure things out, I'd say, let go, until the desire would fade out. So I'm making it very simple for you, to save you from getting caught in an incredible amount of suffering. Because there's nothing more sorrowful than having to attend international Buddhist conferences. Some of you might have the desire to become the Buddha of the age, Maitreya, radiating love throughout the world. But instead, I suggest just being an earthworm. Letting go of the desire to radiate love throughout the world. Just be an earthworm who only knows 2 words. Let go, let go, let go. So just let go. Let go of trying to control everything. Let go of expectations. Let go of the outcomes. Let go of trying to be anything other than your beautiful selves. Just let go.